What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Perfectly Blended podcast. We have an amazing episode for you today. I mean, you'd probably be surprised right now, but we're actually going to have guests. And that's coming up when, babe?
In studio.
Right now.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Perfectly Blended podcast. This podcast is for blended families, for couples that want to strengthen their marriage and want a brighter future. Perfectly Blended exists to break the stigma of divorce, drop the shame and guilt holding you back, and equip marriages to thrive instead of just survive. We believe all that is possible in this life is based on the power of Jesus Christ and His ability to restore us fully. Let's dive in. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. I am one of your hosts, Josh. I'm here with the always beautiful Miss Kristy. How are you, love?
I'm amazing.
You are amazing.
Yeah.
That's actually highly true.
So
we want to welcome our awesome guests that are here today, our very good friends, Hannah and Austin Sutherland. Welcome to the show, guys.
What's
Thank
up?
you for
Thanks
having
us.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Do you have anything you want to say before we jump right in?
No. I'm good.
Simple as that? Just
Yeah.
no, huh?
I don't think so.
straight
I don't
up,
think
like-
there's anything that, I'm excited to have. This is the first time we've ever had live guests inside the studio, you
Let's
know,
go.
so we're all squeezed in here, squidged, like real tight. So
Now, it looks
hopefully
like there's
nobody,
lots of freedom. There's really not.
so hopefully nobody farts because that would be bad.
Yeah, what do they call a Christian when they pass gas?
I don't know.
I don't know either. I thought it was going to be a
Oh
joke
my
that
gosh,
everybody
I
would
thought you had an answer.
I don't know that joke, so. But we are excited, right? So now we want to warn you, right? Before we get started today, if you have children that are around, we're really going to highly suggest that you put headphones in and maybe turn the screen away so they don't read lips. But we want to let you know that today's episode really is about sex addiction. So we are going to talk about some stuff that may be inappropriate for certain ears. So we want to warn you also that you may get triggered from some things that may be related to that. And we want to make sure that we are conscious of those types of concerns. So we want to warn you before we jump in. Now, if you've experienced any of this, so you have any of this stuff that's been in your past or history or even that you're dealing with now, today is going to be such an amazing opportunity for you to hear a testimony of marriage, how God's true redemption is possible in that. So we're just really excited to get in and dive into this today.
Yeah, thanks for being here, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yes.
You know, they have 3 kids, so they had to, do something, cage them, like leash them up somewhere just to be here.
Cat
So,
crates.
for us
Yeah.
to be
Yeah,
for us to be quiet.
We put them out in the chicken coop with the chickens, so they should be good.
They're probably like that. They probably
yeah.
would like that. Yeah.
They didn't really do that. Okay.
No, we didn't.
Let's be honest. All right.
You ready to get started?
Let's do
Okay. I'm so excited to have you guys here. So tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about you and your party of 5. They're not a blended family.
No,
They're
we're not
not.
a blended family. So we have been married, we'll be 10 years this year. We have 3 kids, 8, 7, and going to be 3. I stay home. I work from home. No, I stay home and work at home full time.
Yeah.
Homeschool our kids, and we're pretty involved with our church.
Yeah, we do worship at our church. We're very involved with that. I am a journeyman electrician. I work as a manager at an electrical company at this moment. And that's
And
pretty
they
much
both
it. Hannah
sing.
covered it pretty good.
Yeah, we sing.
Yeah.
Austin plays the guitar.
We
Yeah.
get by.
That's how we actually know Hannah and Austin is the church that we currently go to. They used to go to, and Austin used to lead worship there, and he is an absolute incredible singer.
Thank you.
He's got an
Yes.
amazing voice. God's really gifted him with that.
He should
so
be famous.
should
That's
be.
not true.
He could be a country
Thank you,
singer,
though.
actually. You could be. Like, you have that.
We're
Big
going to have to
shoes
get
to
him to
fill.
sing later.
So we're just going to talk about that for like 10 minutes. Yeah, and then we're going to have him sing later. Little acapella.
Put me on the spot.
Yeah. We could sing you could sing your answers.
Yeah.
Hope
Let's
you
make
got
this thing
auto-tune.
entertaining as possible, right?
I don't know how to follow it up, but I would just be like, yeah.
That'd be uncomfortable.
Probably for many.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
many.
Just wait till you hear the answer. I'm sure it will be very uncomfortable.
Right?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So a little bit of fill in here, okay? So everybody understands a little bit about Hannah and Austin. So today we're going to be talking about sex addiction. So, and I'm going to have Austin kind of fill us in a little bit about where that all came from, but in a minute. So why we had them on today is they're a married couple, like they said, of 10 years, and they have had to deal with sex addiction, which is something that Austin has been suffering with for years. And so their life has been absolutely transformed through this process. And so that's really the main reason why we want to have them on today. But why don't you give us a little history of the sex addiction. Why don't you let us know a little bit about that?
Started when I was young. When I was very young, I was sexually abused when I was 10. And it's kind of all began from there. A lot of shame around that, a lot of disappointment, distrust that began around that time. And as I began to grow and, go from a little boy to a young man, like your sexuality grows, obviously as you hit puberty and then on. And all through that time, I was seeking out behaviors to help me kind of numb a lot of that shame and the guilt that I felt over, the abuse that had happened to me, and obviously the attraction to, anything sexually related. You're becoming a preteen and everything. Everything starts to ramp up, and so you go from wanting to kind of numb out a lot of this stuff that started innocently. And then it turns very not innocent anymore.
Yeah.
And you get hooked on the actual drug of it all.
So tell us a little bit about, Hannah, that kind of led up to the point of where you started to kind of discover some things that you thought were off between you and Austin in that way.
So I really did not have any idea until looking back now. There were things that had happened that I had excused away, but it wasn't until we were already married and I was pregnant for our oldest that I started to find things on the computer, like pornography and things. And I was like, that's weird. I knew he had always said, well, I used to struggle with it, which is what we hear a lot now from couples. Well, my husband used to. And so I was saying that, he said he used to, but that's
right.
Used to, years ago, I'm thinking. And so when I found it, right there in front of me, I was like, okay. And then I would come to him and, we'd start the cycle. He'd be sorry, remorseful. He's not going to do it again. And we'd go a couple years. And I wouldn't really see nothing tangible like that for a long time. And then something would come up or things just wouldn't add up. And then it really started to get pretty frequent in 2018 until 2021.
Yeah.
Do you mind sharing any details of really where it really came to a head?
So what got us into recovery, I guess, is, if that's what you mean, is it finally got to the point where there were people in my life who loved me enough to say, if you are not willing to fight this battle or don't feel like you can, we're going to for you. It's getting, I don't like using the word dangerous because it makes it seem criminal, and we weren't to that point. But it wasn't good at all. It wasn't just pornography. It wasn't even just affairs. In my support system, my family was being directly affected. And so people were like, this has to end. And what you've done so far is not working. And it wasn't really do more that they were pointing their finger at me. But it was honestly, I needed it. I was living, when you live with an addict who has gaslit you for so long, you start to not know reality. And I'd be like, it's fine. He said this, and I would believe it. And I would try to make it make sense in my head. And so finally when I had been confronted by both my parents, separately, years apart, I was like, okay, you're going to have to confront this. And so I did for one last time, and I just remember driving home to confront him, and I was just like, Lord, I really don't know. Part of me was like, I'm so mad I have to do this again, that I have to do this conversation again. But the other part of me was like, I know that I'm talking to the Lord driving home. I'm like, Lord, I know that you would tell me when it was time to go. I still don't feel that, but I know that I can't do this.
Yeah.
I cannot stay married like this. So for whatever reason, I got home and I walked right up to him, and he was like, hey, how's your day? And I'm like, we need to talk. And I know that you know what this is about. And he did. He always did. And I'm like, you have until Monday to decide if you would like to file for divorce or if you'd like to go to rehab. And he decided on rehab.
Yeah.
So I think what's important about all of this story, though, because we went over their house the other night to have dinner, and we all were talking about different addictions, right? There's gambling addiction, pornography addiction, chemical addiction, alcohol, all of those things. And around this, Hannah and Austin have their own podcast now called Fully Known that they've been talking about. But we were talking about the difference when it comes to dealing with something like this, because a lot of the finger pointing could go to both. So the person that's suffering with the addiction has their own hurts that they have to heal from, that they're trying to cover up to not let it hurt their current family. But then the spouse, and there is women that struggle with this too, and their husbands have to deal with this, but then the spouse that is dealing with it feels kind of like ashamed, like, are people going to look at me thinking I'm not pleasing my spouse enough, things like that. And it's forcing them, because there's a lot of judgment around that. So I am really proud of you guys for embracing your journey that God has put you together. You guys have been ordained to do it together. And you're willing to share it to help and encourage other couples that struggle with this, because I don't feel like it's talked about enough. I really don't.
I think it's easier for people to share things about drug addiction.
Exactly.
Even about prostitution, unfortunately. I think it's easier than it's to talk about this, because people look at Hannah and say, how could you stay? I wouldn't.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
So I think there's a lot of power in that. And I really like how you said something about, you relied on your faith, not on your flesh, really to make the decision for you. I don't feel like God's telling me that I shouldn't be here. And that takes a strong faith. It takes a strong spirit within you to lean into something like that, because this is scary grounds. So tell us a little bit, though. You mentioned about going into rehab. Tell us about rehab. Tell us a little bit about that.
So rehab was the hardest thing I've ever done and the most life-changing thing I've ever done. I mean, you go from, and there's so much in between, where you, the first question that you asked me in rehab, there's so much in between that. But from the time that she came to me that night, it was a Friday night, and said that to me, and I was able to, I saw her get out of the van. I was freaking out. I knew she knew. But I was going to try to play it off like, hey, what's up? Can I distract you from this? And I was not able to. So she said that to me. And I was like, wow, she's really we're either going to get a divorce or I'm going to go to rehab. So like, it was just to come to actually be able to process through that for a minute and come to terms with the fact, like, I have like 2 days to figure out where I'm going to go, what I'm going to do. Do I want to do this? What's going to happen? So immediately start trying to find a place to be able to go. I found a place to be able to go that had beds available that was specifically focused on sexual addiction. It focused on other addictions as well if you had them, but the house that I was in there was specifically for that. And I went there, and I was in a house with like 10 other guys, and it was ran very strict as far as, no technology available to you. Like, you don't get to have your phone. There's no computers, no nothing. And so you get, the first week was probably, I was going to say the first week was the hardest. I don't know if that's true, but each week was hard in different ways. And it's like the first week was like a big kind of coming to terms with the fact that, like, I actually did all of this stuff, and I'm actually here now, away from my family. I can do nothing for them. I can't do anything for them that makes me feel like I'm helpful. I can't do anything that actually is helpful. Like, in coming to terms with the fact of, like, all right, God, like, I need you to fill in these voids where I can't, like, I literally can't be there. And then
you can't distract yourself either.
I can't distract myself either. And then, to go through a couple more days and realize, like, I have to be willing to, you start talking about the 12 steps right away. Sure. They're every day. It's, it's just part of the vocabulary. It's part of the lingo. And it's like, you're talking about surrendering to a higher power. And I kind of got to the point where I think it was on like my 4th or 5th day. I just broke down. I was like so distraught that my behavior had gotten me to there, that I had destroyed my family, because we were not assuming that we were going to like work out at that point.
We knew we weren't filing for divorce
that day.
Right.
Yeah.
But I was 80% done.
it was not like, if you go, we'll stay together. It was not like that at all. The presumption was, we're done.
You go, and then there's still maybe a chance.
Yeah. Well, but here's the thing that I think that is most important. Like there was a couple of different things that happened between the day that she told me, that I need to look into finding somewhere, and the day that I actually left, that God really opened my eyes through a couple of different conversations that we had over, like, if you don't go, and if you don't go right now, your problems are going to be so much bigger. Like, we talk about this on our podcast a lot. Like, addiction is never satisfied to stay where it's at. It always wants to grow.
That's so good.
It always, especially when you start talking about sexual addiction and stuff, because you hear about somebody who like has like molested a child or looked at some sort of like really taboo, type stuff, and it's like, how in the heck? But when you've been in it for a little while, and if you take an honest look back, it's like, okay, I started here,
and
then I needed a little bit more dopamine, and
Yeah.
a little bit more fear,
Yeah.
built into a little bit more excitement.
Goes from looking to then participating.
Exactly.
And more and more
it's
and more,
totally
yeah.
it's super progressive, and it's like it doesn't just want to stay. And so when we had those couple of conversations, and I was like, she started talking about like the safety of our kids and like those around us, and I just like I had to be really honest with myself, like the people that I actually know from other recovery groups that have done these actual criminal things, like they at one point were where I'm at today.
Sure.
Yeah.
And like they didn't just wake up one day and start doing that. So I just like I felt like a denial kind of fell off of me. Like a layer of denial kind of fell off of me in that moment. Like no matter whether we work out or not, for the safety of myself, my children, for Hannah, and literally anybody around me, I have to do this thing.
That's powerful.
And so I didn't go there fully under the pretenses of like, if I go, then we get to get back together.
Sure.
That was not at all true. So I get there. It's very, 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 very hard, but very incredible. The relationships that you are making with these other people. Yeah. It's like 8 hours of group therapy a day, and then 1 hour of individual therapy a day with a professional, like sex addiction therapist.
Gotcha.
So you're doing all this. You're honestly, you're kind of relearning how to live life. A lot of the people that were there didn't really, some of them didn't really know how to like take care of themselves very well. Yeah. It's like you're going from using this thing that has taken up so much of your focus, your thoughts, your energy for so long, and now you don't have it. Yeah. Now how are we going to distract ourselves? Or now, so we're all like sitting there eating in the pantry together. And I'm being kind of serious and kind of not. Like it wasn't just like we're all switching addictions or anything, but the growth that happened through there, like I really was able to learn how to surrender. Yeah. And it was very, very, very painful because I had learned to love control. If I could keep her under my control and, know where she was at, know what she was doing, gaslight her into thinking certain ways and like all this stuff, and then like doing the same thing with myself, honestly, and helping myself feel like I showed up at home today at the end of the day, so I'm a good husband.
How long ago was this? How long you been sober?
September 17th, 2021. So it's a little bit over 18 months sober.
Oh, year and a half.
So it's similar to alcoholism, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people are under the pretense like, I didn't drink today, so I can drink tomorrow and I'm not an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Right,
It's
exactly.
the same thing.
Exactly.
But there is a lot to unpack here, though, too. For couples that are listening right now, too, is that something that you may not know either is Austin is a pastor's kid, right? So I think that there's a lot of people, especially pastoral kids, that maybe have a lot more pressure on them to not be able to talk about their vulnerabilities. And then also as a couple now, you guys have to work together, not just his addiction where he's at now, but there's a lot to heal from because you were molested as a child. And there's a lot of men that has happened to. And they're not willing or not comfortable enough to talk about it. And we could have a whole nother podcast just with you
on that, right?
Just on how what happened to you, the pressure of being a pastor's kid, that happening to you, and how that drove you to find something to fill a void in your life, which turned out to be, it could have been anything.
Yeah, for sure.
And it turned out to be that. So with that being said, though, how did you both work together? Because you also have healing to do from your childhood to work together, because anything affects the marriage.
Yeah.
You know, you're one now, to overcome this challenge together.
Yeah, Hannah, take the lead on this one because I'm really curious. I feel like your work had to be much different than Austin's. Not less work, but different.
Yeah. So my goal in sending him to rehab, or hoping that was the choice he was going to make, was that he would do it for himself. That was my ultimate hope. I did not know, though. I did not know what he would pick. Yeah. I told God, because I like to do that.
You told God.
I told God I was going to give him a year. And then I told him I was going to give him a year. And I committed to not make any decision about divorce or really our marriage for a year. But in doing that meant I was not going to go find a boyfriend, even though I wanted to badly. Sure. Yeah. I wanted anything to take the pain away. And that seemed like a really good idea, especially because he got to do whatever he wanted for so long. And I was like, okay, great. I'll figure it out. I'll go find somebody. But I knew ultimately that would not get me what I really wanted. So I did not do that. But so that's kind of what I meant. Like, I'm giving you a year. I'm giving God a year to work in me.
I love it when we tell God stuff.
Yeah,
like, this is what I'm doing.
Yep. And I committed to you like a year because I wanted him to go through the process without panicking.
Oh, that's good.
Because when he panics, it just gets screwy. And I wanted us to actually heal and actually just have this be it. And I knew if we rushed it and wanted a decision when he came home November 5th, are we staying together or are we not? I knew that we wouldn't fully do the process.
You're still giving him grace. You're still offering him help, even though everything he's done to you in the moment of your worst part of your life.
Which is God, though, too.
That is so powerful to
God.
hear that, though.
Yeah.
To say, I don't want to put any more pressure on him, even though he's laid all the pressure on you.
Yeah.
You know, it does take one of us in a relationship when things are poor. I think that needs to be not missed or skipped over.
Yeah, for sure.
It takes one of us to step up and say, okay, I gotta be extra bold in this moment to keep the wheels going on the bus. That's just that's so powerful.
Yeah. So that was like a practical thing I could do at the time to give us time and to do the things we needed to do. And it allowed me to not have to try to figure out lawyers and figure out where I'm going to live and all this stuff. Because I have 3 kids. I wasn't working. There was like a couple discoveries before that last one that I did get a job because I thought, okay, I need to start getting a plan together if he's not going to be serious. So I did have like a very part-time job, but I mean, we weren't going to live on it. So instead of panicking about all of that, I'm like, right now, this is top priority is his health and safety, my health and safety, and our kids.
Yeah.
And I mean, from there, we just, I don't know.
What's the goals that you guys have, though? Like, you're working through it together. You make in a marriage, like, agreements with each other.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this is what the healing process is going to look like. How are we going to set up transparency and vulnerability and all of those things so that if he slips back or relapse is part of recovery.
Yeah.
Right. So if he has a relapse, how that's part of, I think, working together as a marriage. What were some of those conversations that you guys had?
Oh, gosh.
Take that one? You want me to start?
Yeah, you start.
So we didn't know a lot of that until after I was already at rehab, and that was kind of part of the program is coming up with, you talk about like a relapse prevention plan and like what are we gonna, a game plan of what am I gonna do when I get home, month 1, month 2, month 3 through 6, from the time that I get home to protect myself. Because it was more self-focused. It wasn't so marriage-focused. But I think through trying to protect myself, then that's going to automatically affect the marriage. And so that's stuff that we were able to actually talk about before I left. We got to do a couple of family, not conferences, family meetings together via Zoom with my therapist and her and myself. And so we were able to talk through some of that. And I think that was really helpful. We knew that sex was off the table for a while. We knew that we were doing a sex fast and it was going to be at least this long. And so I think that was a big helper to know that we could just focus on ourselves. Like no matter whether we were having a good day or a bad day. And if it was a good day, like nobody was like, let's go have sex with each other.
Right. Right.
Yeah, which sounds crazy that like, through all this, like that would still be a thing, but like it is.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
talk about like sex band-aids
sense.
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
our podcast. Like
Yeah.
you just slap a band-aid on it and
Yeah.
it feels a little bit better, but
Yeah.
it's like you don't deal with the inner problem. So through that relapse prevention plan, our own therapy after I came home, and we talk a lot. We talk a lot, and we just promised to be super open and vulnerable with each other about like what we need.
And you have a podcast about it.
We have
now.
a podcast now.
So you talk about it
We
all
do
the time.
Thanos check-ins too. We were doing it, a lot back then of just checking
Did you
in
say
with each.
Thanos?
No, Thanos.
I'm saying-
Thanos.
And at the end of this, you and Josh are gonna have to do a Thanos check-in with each other
Okay.
live.
Okay.
yeah,
Tell
so-
us about it. What is it?
We will.
Thanos check-in. It's awesome. It's a check-in that you can do typically with your spouse, nightly or whenever you want to. But it gets an acronym: feelings, affirmations, needs, opportunities, and sobriety. So, it gives you an opportunity is something that the other person can maybe do a little bit better.
And they say
job
don't
at.
do it naked. You have to be clothed.
Clothes.
Right, exactly.
It's not supposed to lead to sex.
I'm probably not gonna focus on it super great.
Yeah, only her not naked. He naked, probably fine. She's not gonna deal with this.
Please no.
I mean, I remember one of my biggest things was like, I required you to go to a meeting 90. You did 90 meetings in 90 days when you got back. He did not move back home when he got out of rehab. He lived with some family. He had a curfew, so like we weren't just hanging out all hours of the night, just because we were excited to be back, in some normalcy.
Yeah.
You got a sponsor who took care of a lot of like the what do you call it?
Just like
Accountability stuff.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't do that anymore, and you still go to group now.
Yeah, I did what was on my relapse prevention
that's
plan.
cool.
I did it, and I just kept doing it. I knew a weekly meeting, a every morning phone call, or 90 meetings in 90 days. I found this every morning phone call, and I still do it to this day. And it's the same guys that are on there as when I started. I still go to a weekly meeting. I still go to therapy. Her and I are still talking a lot about it. I still consume recovery material. So consistency and activities that build trust between us have been the biggest thing.
I mean, it's going to be his turn to ask a question, but I do want to just ask this really quick thing. Like, how good does it feel? Because we know, because we're recovering alcoholics, right? How good does it feel, though,
To have this burden.
now that it's all gone? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
everything's out in the open.
Right.
Like, how amazing does that feel?
I like that question, and I don't like that question. So, like when I first left, or actually really when I first came back, I remember getting asked that question. I bet you feel so good. I bet you feel so amazing. And I did partially, but I also had spent the last, 45 days going face to face with every way that I've destroyed my life. And so it's like, I just felt really selfish about feeling like, I feel way better, but my life is imploded over here.
You're dealing pain by coming clean.
Exactly. So it's like, it's a double-edged sword. Yes, there's a transparency that is the start to trust. And that feels good.
Yeah.
And it feels like that part of it feels good. And the part of it where it's like, I don't have to hide anything anymore. I don't have to feel like, guys, my heart literally almost stopped multiple times. Like between the amount of energy drinks I was drinking, I was abusing my prescription drugs, I was chewing tobacco, like all the stimulants, like
And the anxiety of constantly feeling like I was gonna
find
catch him.
out,
Find
like
something,
the
sure.
anxiety of her finding out.
Yeah.
Like I was just like, all right, I can feel it skipping beats right now physically. Like this is it. And so to come back after 45 days, which doesn't seem like that long, I felt like I almost felt like I was getting out of prison in a way. Like that seems really, that seems like a really big way of saying something kind of small. But it was like, I had all this stuff that I could use when I went in. And now I've gotten all these new tools and I feel comfortable with them, but I've done it in such a controlled environment. And now I come out into the real world.
Now they hand you your phone back.
And here, all
man.
right, here's your phone back after 45 days.
Yeah.
You still haven't got to give it to your sponsor yet to get the protection and everything on it. And,
Got that gap there.
yeah. And it's just like, it's really where the rubber meets the road. Am I going to be serious? Like, I've learned a lot of awesome things. I've done a lot of awesome therapy, like during this 45 days here, but now what?
Yeah.
And now what when I start encountering issues at home, and when I when life happens, when temptations happen, and
Which is gonna.
triggers happen and stuff. So it's been a wild ride.
So 18 months, Hannah. Where's your trust? How's your trust?
My trust is a lot better, but I don't know that it'll ever be fully there, like at a 10.
How do you cope with that? In what ways do you deal with that?
I am okay with knowing that no matter what he decides to do, he could relapse tomorrow, and I would be sad. I'd be really sad. But I would be okay. Yeah. I would be okay, And so my life doesn't begin or end with his recovery.
Right. That's right.
And so I would be sad. I don't want people to be like, oh, well, that's great. But it's like, I can't, I've lived my life like that, and I have decided I'm not going to anymore.
Yeah.
So I do trust him. We still have lots of things that come up that we're like, oh, we thought we were past that.
Yeah.
And we're not.
Yeah.
And so we're like, okay. Or things will happen and we'll be like, that's weird it's happening now. So we'll be like, okay, Lord, what's about to happen that you're getting us ready for it now, or trying to help us avoid something that's coming up, so we're going to deal with this now.
Yep.
And so we try to look at it.
Warning?
Yeah.
Yeah, like why is this
Are we getting
here?
a little too lax in some area? And so we try to view things like that. Like, okay, if God's not blessing you with something, he's protecting you from something.
Right.
And so we're like, okay, we try to really take those things seriously. So yeah, my trust has grown. I mean, watching him do a thing and follow through. I mean, I really didn't think he'd choose rehab. I didn't think he wanted to pick divorce, but I didn't know if he'd leave the kids.
Yeah.
And 6 weeks is a long time.
It is.
So
It's a long time.
I was like, he might not go just because of that. And then he committed to it, and he did finish. He did not come home early. He did his 90 meetings in 90 days. It was just these little things that he said he was going to do, and he did them. And I was like, okay. And I just kind of just kept watching. I'm like, I don't want to hear anything you have to say.
Yeah.
I've heard all of it anyways.
Yep.
I could tell you what you're going to say. I don't care. So I would just watch, and yeah, it's been growing little by little.
Yeah.
All the time.
Well, let's talk about tools, okay? So let's talk about tools. Your 3 favorite tools that you guys have at your disposal right now that would probably be really helpful to somebody listening. Or
Thanos check-in.
Superheroes are always helpful. But somebody that's listening or watching, like, what are some good tools? Maybe that helps with trust, helps with accountability. Like, name your 3 favorite.
I do want to double down on Thanos check-in. I think that was huge because, especially when something has recently happened, and your things are charged up and everything, it gives a format to being able to talk about where you're actually at, and it gives you a format to think about where you're actually at. You're closing your eyes, like feelings. How do I feel right now? I feel anxious, I feel happy, I feel sad, like all and you're using the feelings wheel and using actual feelings that you're not just saying I'm good.
Yeah, I feel fine.
Yeah.
Affirmations. It's kind of forcing you to give an affirmation to that person, to actually look for something good. Needs. What do I need? Either it can be something like what I need from you, or like something I literally just need to do today. It's just needs. Opportunities. You kind of didn't listen to me very good earlier, and that bothered me. And next time I'm trying to pour myself out to you, I'd really appreciate if you were able to just stop and listen and not try to fix it or something. And sobriety. I did my call this morning. I consumed recovery material this morning. I read my Bible. I called my sponsor, all of that stuff. And then sobriety, though, is not just for the addict. It's also for the betrayed as well. I would call it like sober-mindedness. What have you done for yourself, for like self-care? How have you taken care of yourself that day? Yeah. And I think
Thanos.
I think Thanos is awesome because it just sets a parameter where, like, when it's done, you just say thank you for sharing, just like in a 12-step group.
Yeah, like we don't need to fix it. I mean, the opportunity you can talk about, but like, it's not.
But not till after they're done sharing.
It's not like you have to take what they say and then be like, okay, these are all the things I'm going to make right for them. It's just like sharing, like, okay, thank you for sharing.
That's good.
Which is a really good tool to also learn how to do. Like, I'm not going to take all that on.
Yeah.
I'm going to let it sit there. And if I feel like I need to address something, then I can. But to not have to go into that codependency and then try to fix everything.
Codependency in and of itself is.
I think if you're dealing with someone who's struggling with pornography or like apps or something like that, like the software is super helpful. I know it's not completely perfect, but especially if you get a good one, it does take a lot of that off of your mind.
What do you guys use?
We use a program called Truple.
Oh yeah.
It kind of does it all. It filters through all like text, not text messages only, like all text that goes on the screen.
Got you.
For anything like sexually
Like on your device,
explicit. Yeah. So any time that anything's up on the screen, it's just constantly like eyes looking across the page, and it will screenshot every you can set it. I think mine is set to go off between every 30 seconds to every 2 minutes. It will do a screenshot. That's just in general. If it detects like anything explicit on the screen, it will screenshot that as well.
All right.
And then whoever is monitoring that, which at first it was Hannah, but that was kind of traumatizing, which I want to talk about that in a second too. So I switched it to my sponsor who monitors that now. And it's kind of cool because as you look at it from the side of the person who is monitoring the account, it like red flags anything. It can help make it a little more obvious. You don't have to filter through these thousands of screenshots of
nothing,
whatever
people's
So what else would, other than the software, what do you think, what else would be a really good tool that you guys utilize that helps?
Community. I mean, I know it's not so much a tool, but just I guess it is just a community. Find a group, find a for the addicted, find a 12-step group to be a part of. Not like cushy one either. Like one with
tell you
people,
what you want, not what you need to
hear. Not a cushy one. One that's gonna challenge you. Like you should feel a little bit uncomfortable. You should feel a little bit stretched.
Yeah.
If you're not feeling stretched, then you're not growing, and so it's just a waste of time. If you just go to somewhere.
Community, something that you would agree?
Community, definitely for me. This one's hard for me though because Austin did a really good job of consuming a lot of recovery stuff prior.
Yeah.
And he was still in full addiction. So sometimes it's not the things. Honestly, for me, like it is helpful, and my tools I've done have been super helpful just in my healing. But like, just watching him, his responses, like his humility. Is he humble? Is he trying to justify? Is he trying to like not deny, but like kind of deflect, or is he kind of trying to be like wordy? Like if he gets super wordy, sometimes he'll still go into it. Sometimes he'll be like, wait a second. Like
does it feel like manipulation?
I don't like how
very
this sounded.
salesy.
Yeah, and I'll be like, I don't know what's going on.
And then
but my red flags are up because I'm
Yeah.
like, why are you talking with so many words?
Right.
Just tell me what I need to know. So for me, watching him do his things has gained trust, but just being like, just finding my voice and my power to be like, I don't care at all about any of that you're trying to tell me.
Yeah,
you're trying to do this like weird dance around the thing that I'm talking about. I want to know about the thing.
Right.
And making myself actually follow through with that because that's been super hard.
Yeah.
Normally I'd let him do that and I don't anymore.
We can get to, because you said that you wanted to talk about the triple thing with her. But what I really wanted our viewers and our listeners to understand too is this was a big deal. This wasn't a marriage that was just like, oh, they're not, he goes to work, she's at home, and they find out. Like they were part of Celebrate Recovery with us. They were on the worship team. He was a worship leader at their church. I mean, they were heavily involved in the Christian community. So this was a big deal for him and them to come together and even decide now at this point, let's do a podcast. I mean, let's broadcast it to more viewers to see how much we could help more now that we're here.
Yeah.
That is a huge thing that God would want you to do, right? Like his power is made perfect in your weakness.
Yeah,
that's the things that he wants us to do. So it is really good that you guys can take the crucifixion of your marriage and help people with its revival. Yeah. And so I don't want to downplay. I don't think we did a really good job with actually how involved they were in so many things, while Austin was doing all of these things. And then it was more like, it felt more public, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Too.
it was really public. And it's like, I appreciate what you said, because it is very hard to constantly feel like we are crucifying our marriage. Everything that I have done has been shameful and guilt-filled, and all of that. It's not been something I'm just like super proud of that I did, and not only by the activities that I did, but the destruction that I caused to our marriage. So it's very hard at times to want to remain humble and just be openly, blatantly honest with people.
Yeah.
But I kind of ask myself often, like, who could help a recovering sex addict better than somebody who's been through it? Who could help a wife who's going through betrayal trauma better than a wife who's gone through a severe amount of betrayal trauma?
Yeah.
And that's actually what I wanted to touch on from the Truple thing. I was talking about the PTSD around her having to be the one. Anytime something would get flagged, because sometimes it will flag things that come up on the screen that actually don't have
like
any.
Facebook, it's Mark Zuckerberg flagging.
Exactly. It's like it doesn't. It's like there's no sexual nature to it at all for whatever reason.
Yeah.
The AI inside of the app, flagged it. And
Fact
so
checker.
Stomach drops.
Exactly.
Oh my
Oh yeah.
gosh.
First thing when she wakes up in the morning, you have a new email, from Truple. So
She had a kind of a trigger just for me calling her the other day, because I never call
Absolutely.
her. Never.
Yeah.
yeah.
And she's like, why the crap is Kristy calling me?
And so that's my point exactly. It's just to talk about like betrayal trauma, PTSD. I don't want all the focus to just be on like the activities that I've done only. There is a whole other side of that coin where it has to do with what my actions have caused and what you've had to go through. And like, yeah, you've been mad and angry and like, wanted to get even or like all of that. But there's a whole different level of hurt and trauma that's there too, that I'm sure a lot of people who've been affected by this have felt.
And you've had to be raising 3 small children during all of this as well, 2 of which are boys, So I'm sure that you guys want to talk about or have talked about in your marriage what that's going to look like as your boys get older, because they are, we experienced it with our boys. They are going to get curious, and they're going to start looking at Pornhub or doing things that they shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
So, because we need, I'm sure then, to make sure that it's not a trigger for him when those things come up too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do believe in generational chains and bondage too. And that's something that we've talked about a lot. Just like, it can end here. It can end here. Like, they're still going to make their own choices. They're still going to do what they are going to do. But as far as like generational curses, like we can break that. And that has been something that I've come back to time and time again as I think about them, and not only about my boys, but about Margot and whoever she ends up marrying someday.
Yeah.
It's like, that can end here.
Yeah.
Like God says that doesn't have to keep going.
Yeah, no, the word legacy gets brought up a lot, even in the church, and legacy sometimes is a word thrown around, but I think legacy really is allowing Jesus to work through us in such a way that it impacts generations below us. And that is our legacy, right? If we allow us to be vulnerable enough and actually dig in and allow God to work on these items in our lives, and then that's going to trickle down and impact our children in ways that are only going to impact their children and their children's children. And that to me is legacy.
Yeah.
That to me is legacy.
For sure.
We always said that too. Like, when we decided to stay married, it was like, well, then it's not going to be just for us.
Yeah.
Or even our kids, because this is like, in so many ways, would have been easier to leave. Like, there are
For
still
sure.
a
So
lot of
many ways.
repercussions that we're walking through that are not healed yet. And so, like, a lot of my life could be better, different if I was not here. And so it's like, if I'm choosing this harder path, believing ultimately it to be good, then it's not just going to be for us.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. But
And
that's a
just
hard
think-
thing to decide.
What we lose sight of, though, is the 30 years from now or the 50 years from now. And you're speaking of generations and what that takes for you guys now to be so open about it. to continue to talk about it, give it a voice. Josh and I just shared our testimonies a couple weeks ago about it. And one of the things I said about mine that's so important is embrace the suck, embrace your story. You have to be confident. It's your story. It happened. And we have to be confident in that and the journey that we're on. And you guys thinking 20 years from now, 30 years from now, breaking generational curses, we forget it so easily about grandkids and great grandkids and all of those things.
Yeah.
And the impact from you guys staying together, that could cause a Christianity to ripple through your grandkids and your kids and all of that, to see the strength of and the healing redemption of God in the middle of the marriage when you decide to do the hard thing.
Right.
Divorce, Josh and I talk about it a lot. We're divorced, we're remarried. God wouldn't want us to have to get divorced. We shouldn't have gotten divorces. This is where we are now. And the fact that you guys are choosing what God would want you to do and allow him to heal your marriage. And you guys are the ones that have to put the hard work in, the trust, and just feeling like a child a little bit, I'm sure, with your phone and all of that stuff. But submitting yourselves and your marriage over to God is huge. And that's generational. That's generational.
Absolutely.
That's what changes lives. Is that.
It's a big part why we want to have you guys on, because this is a topic, like we mentioned in the beginning, that we don't get to talk about much.
No.
The world doesn't talk about it much less the Christian community.
Right.
It's like we don't want to talk about those things.
It's like
But
taboo.
It is taboo, but if you look at a lot of the leaders, a lot of the Christian leaders, 99% of them that fall from their own grace is because of sexual sin.
Right.
And it's such a you can't smell it on your breath.
Right.
It's something you can hide, but it's something that impacts you on such a deep level that it just leaves catastrophic damage to the people that you care about the most. And to watch, that you guys are trying to take this and mold it into something that God can use is where the true value in your marriage is really going to shine through this, being vulnerable, being open and honest. I mean, how is starting your podcast is brand new for you guys, right? And I know it was a scary thing to start, but how do you feel like it's impacted you guys as a couple doing it?
It's therapeutic.
It is. And we'll think of things that we want to talk about, or we'll go back in time sometimes, like, remember how we felt when this, and like we'll want to talk about it again and really just keep talking about it. Like we say a lot on our podcast, like a lot of women I talk to are like, my husband refuses to talk about this with me. Like, I found this, we've talked about it the one time I found it, and he's like, okay, I'm not doing it anymore. Like, what's the problem?
Right.
And I say all the time, like, we talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
I never stop talking about it. Like, I might we'll talk about an instance, and I'll be like, okay, like, good, we talked about it. And then something will come into my mind, and I'll be like, and another thing.
It's like a different layer, though. It's not like you're not beating a dead horse.
No, it's like another
thing. Exactly. And it's like, you're every time you talk about it, you're going deeper. So you're not like beating me up every single time.
No,
and you're
I'm not
beating
ever
me up
yelling.
at all.
Yeah, I don't.
It's not about that.
Yell or like. It's honestly, it's my goal in bringing it up, and this should be your goal when bringing it up, is for healing. It's not to bring more shame or whatever. If you're angry, that's fine, but you're going to have a sponsor for that, a group for that, your therapist, your trusted circle.
Because you have to heal too.
Yeah. So like I am angry, but like that's not going to heal this. So if I need clarity on something, I'm going to ask him, and I don't care. I don't.
What's beautiful about it, though, is, and I don't want to minimize what happened in your marriage, but I knew Josh when I was 18 and some of the things he did back then with girlfriends he had and things like that. And then me being molested growing up and having some bad relationships too growing up. When him and I got together, I had huge trust issues because I knew the type of person he used to be. So I think it is very therapeutic and helps build trust, especially with women, because we are going to say, oh, yeah, well, what about that then? And we sometimes are scared or fearful to bring it up because we don't want you guys to feel like we're beating a dead horse. But we also need to be reassured too and know that you're allowing to build that trust with us and allowing to ask the questions. And I know he always said, I'd rather you ask me and get it out of the way than have it fester and then it
for sure.
spirals and then it grows into this
attaches
huge
to
thing.
everything else.
Yes.
It
And then
will.
I'm questioning every single little thing he's done. So I think it's very important that you guys talk about that. And I think it's a good point that Hannah is saying is I'm not bringing it up to bring you more shame or to make you feel worse. I'm trying to heal too.
Yeah.
And I need to ask this question so I can put it out of my mind.
Yeah.
And
You
he
know?
does a really good job, like, of making space for that. He'll stop whatever he's doing at the time.
Good.
It'll happen at random times, and that's I
It's
think
like
just
grief,
part of the
though.
PTSD
Yeah, absolutely.
and the grief. Like, your brain can
Yeah.
only handle what it can handle at the time.
Yeah.
And then a week later from the event, you're like, okay. And then a year later, you're like, okay. Like,
can
you
process
can
differently.
take
Yeah.
more impact
Yeah.
of it. But if you got it all at once, like Lisa Turker says, like, you would die.
Right.
Like, if
Yeah.
you got all of it at once.
Yeah, it's true though.
So your brain will
Destroy
only
him.
do what it can do at the time. And so there will be things we talk about, and he always gives me space to talk about it. And if he can't, then he'll say, like,
But I think
I
that's-
want to, let's revisit it, like, after the kids are in bed.
I think that's the Holy Spirit, though, too. Because
For
when
sure.
people first get saved, God doesn't reveal to us ever and convict us of every single thing that we have to change in our lives,
Yeah.
or we would die.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
So it's like the Holy Spirit reveals to us or convicts us about cussing at different times in our journey, or about watching inappropriate movies that has nudity in it, or about
Yeah.
I don't know, just
Yeah.
certain things. Sure. And so I think that's the Holy Spirit too. Like, hey, I'm only going to reveal or allow you to think certain things at certain times because you wouldn't be
Yeah.
able to handle it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you know, I've always told Christine, I mean, she kind of alluded to it, but even in our relationship, I know that she knew me before. And so coming into this relationship, I'm like, you come to me, you talk to me anytime that you have a feeling of
Yeah.
insecurity. And it's real easy, and I know the world does this by nature, like, your insecurity shouldn't be my problem. And I think that's an unhealthy way to look at
Yeah.
marriage in a totality.
For sure.
Even if you remove the sexual addiction from it. I
Yeah.
think in marriage in general, we have to learn how to embrace our spouse and have some grace when
Yeah.
it comes to insecurities. Telling your spouse they shouldn't have an insecurity is not a way to help them get over their insecurity.
Right.
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 That's not how it works, but having an open door concept is something that's going to help you guys' marriage grow even deeper and
Yeah,
stronger.
like I'm not doing it anymore.
Which is
Yeah.
a tool that came from something that was really bad, you know? And I
Yeah.
think that's
Yeah.
some great things that actually can make you guys have such a deeper level of intimacy. Maybe not 18 months, you know,
Yeah.
but maybe 5 years, 10 years.
Yeah.
You know, you will have this like full trust, this whole feeling of like, I don't have to worry about it. I get goosebumps
Right.
even saying that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I believe that's how God does things with
Yeah.
us. He gives us opportunities that are struggle. It's not the good times where we grow.
Yeah.
It's
That's
the hard
true.
times, you know? And sometimes we're not out of the weeds like we think we should be, but we grow into something that is so amazing. We become this bright star
Yeah.
of what God wants to shine through us, you know? And so, you know, we talked a little bit about faith with you, about how faith really carried you into the journey you're in now. But how does faith apply? You grew up in the church, and
I did.
I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but
Yeah.
you know,
I can make it
you
quick.
grew up in the church, and
Can you, though?
how can
I can make it pretty quick.
how does faith play a role for Austin in this?
In share in group share, you normally get like a minute or so to
Oh,
share.
okay.
So you
We'll
gotta
time
you gotta.
We're all pretty
Ready,
talking.
set, go.
Knock on the table.
Yeah, I was raised in church. My dad was a pastor. My mom and dad both loved me, and I think that they both did as good of a job as they could. There was a lot of outside influences that kind of affected where I ended up at. You know, as far as my faith goes, though, I was saved and baptized when I was 5. Fast forward all the way through adulthood, I was always being the pastor's kid. You learn to kind of be whatever everybody else wants you to be. Having room for your own emotions and your own feelings wasn't really allowed or appropriate.
Sure.
So after not getting what you need through expressing your emotions, you learn very quickly, I get what I need and want when I don't express my emotions or when I don't be who I really am. And so you
Yeah.
learn very quickly to be this thing.
Yeah.
Be this thing.
Sure.
But there's a pain that is underlying, and there's an urge to just numb out all of these things that you're trying to withhold. All of these things, like if I can't let any of this out, these emotions, these feelings, this shame, this guilt, I'm just going to numb it out.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where, between my faith and my addiction, where those things kind of begin to start mixing. Fast forward to Discovery Day 2021, September 17th, 2021. All of that happened. Didn't really have any place to stay or live. I had a friend at the time who I was able to go and stay with, and I remember going to stay at their house. I was driving out there. It was after midnight. I was in the Walmart parking lot, and I was so broken. I knew that this was so broken, and I just asked God, I'm like, God, I feel like I've never, ever been actually saved. I've never actually followed you. And I do believe that. I feel like I was very good at faking it and putting on the mask.
Sure.
And going to be whatever anybody else wanted me to be. I knew the lingo. I know what to say. I know what the Bible says. But to actually have a relationship with God that meant anything to me was not a real thing. Yeah. And I got saved on that night just by myself in my truck. And that was September 19th. And ever since then, and especially over the next couple of weeks at the ranch, when I was the rehab center I was at, when I was dealing with like this surrender, trying to give this surrender over, there was multiple times where like I didn't hear like the audible voice of God, but I just felt the sense of like, I can do it way better than you can do it.
Yeah.
I can handle this thing way better than you can handle this thing.
Yeah.
I can take care of them better than you can take care of them. So just let me have it. And it was like this, I still have this like picture that I feel like God gave me in that moment. It was like roots being ripped out of the ground. Yeah. And like when you're like pulling a weed out of the ground and you feel the roots are like ripping like individually, it felt like that. I felt like he was like ripping this old life away from me. Not like I was like miraculously healed like in the moment and it was never tempted, but just like it felt like that physically. If I could like put a picture to what I was feeling, it was like this part of me was slowly being ripped away, and I could feel it like plink, 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 like every little root that was breaking in that time. And like little by little, the same thing over and over again of just like that surrendering process. And it's like, maybe I believed that God was my savior for a long time, but I never believed that he was my Lord. I never treated him like he was my Lord. And worshipped him and truly acted like I want to be, like the man that I want to be.
It just reminds me of that song, "Standing in Your Presence, Lord. I can feel you digging all my roots up.
Yeah.
I can feel you healing all my wounds up."
Yeah.
And it just reminds me of that song.
Yeah.
When he was saying that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a piece of advice, Hannah, to women that are dealing with this. What would be your single piece of advice?
Oh my gosh, the single piece.
You got to give us one though.
Yeah,
I know there's
man.
a lot.
Yeah, man,
No
we're
pressure.
at 56 minutes.
Yeah, it's all good.
Oh gosh. Okay. If you are a woman of faith, you've got to hand that over to God. Like, in so many ways, you will also go through the 12 steps with him in your own way. And that surrendering of, because some women will go hyper, like, I'm going to control everything he does. And I'm going to make sure I never feel this again because I'm going to know everything he's doing. And you won't get to do that.
Yeah.
It won't do the thing you want it to do. It won't be the result that you want. So really confront it. Don't run from it. I'm not saying that. You need to confront the things that are going on in your marriage that are not God honoring. You need to get community. You need to be in a good church. You need to find a good Christian therapist. And you need to just hand him over to God. And you need to just watch. You need to not keep, you can keep talking about it, but you've got to give him some time. It's going to take some time. We didn't find out, and he went to rehab, and like within 3 days, we're having all these really great conversations.
Yeah.
We didn't have contact in rehab. So like we did a lot of growing on our own where we could not speak.
Yeah.
We could not, even if we wanted to talk and we wanted to. Some days I was like, if he had a phone right now, because he got to go to Tennessee. He's out of state. I'm home with 3 kids and a family unit that is feeling all sorts of emotions that I get the brunt of because he's not here to take it. So that's all my advice.
That's one.
That's one.
It's one big lump.
It was a package.
Points. Yeah. Pray.
Yeah.
Get in good community, good church, good friends. Don't share more than you want to.
Yeah.
I think that's one of our biggest things is like, I'm going to just share everything. And you do need like 1 or 2 really strong women you can, but I would not go blast it online. I would not go blast it to everybody. I wouldn't call his job. I wouldn't call.
That's good. That's good advice.
Yeah.
Try to stay in your mind, even though it's really, really hard at the time.
Love it.
Yeah.
Final thoughts?
I wanted to have, what about Austin?
Yeah, I will.
Oh, me.
Yeah.
You're letting the women go first. Dang.
Yeah.
No, I basically interrupted and asked all the stuff and reminded the stuff that I wanted to do. I wanted to make sure that we unpacked just not all of it, but I wanted to make sure it was honored, like the whole story. Like he is a pastor's kid and he does know who God is, or did growing up, and they were heavily involved in church. Just because you go to church, I love the masks people wear at church, because just because all the people that sit next to you in the pews or chairs, if your church is modern now, doesn't mean that they have their crap together. They don't. You know, they're struggling with things.
Even on stage, people don't have their crap together.
And so we have to. Jesus would offer grace.
Yeah.
Austin and Hannah would be the woman crawling up just to touch his robe. Okay, and that's how we all should be. We touch God, we're healed, we give it over to him. And that's the kind of desperation we should have for Jesus. We shouldn't get caught up in our own feelings. It's hurtful, it's agonizing, it's traumatizing. But we make the hard decisions and give it over to God, and we commit to doing the hard stuff. We do truly get blessed and have so much joy and peace. And we are so small-minded, because 10 years from now, 20 years from now, they're going to have the best marriage, and the rest of us are going to be looking at them saying, how did you do it? And they're going to say, well,
I'm on my third divorce and it's still not working.
Yeah, seriously. Well, we stuck it through with all this stuff. Did you do that? No. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
that's good.
Austin, one piece of advice. You can package it, I guess, like your wife did if you want.
I'm definitely going to package it. I'm going to package it for sure. So I'm going to put it under the title, though, of like just absolute brutal honesty with yourself. The statistic right now is that 85% of church-going people view porn at least once monthly.
Wow.
85%. And that is not all men. It's a humongous problem for women as well.
Yeah.
It's very easy to say, well, I did it last week, but I didn't do it this week. Or I've only done it a couple of times this week. You need to just be really brutally honest with yourself and have a conversation with yourself, and probably with somebody else, and say, hey, what do you think? Because ourself in our own minds is never the best thing to base like what the truth off of, what the truth is. There was a saying that we had at rehab that was like, first thought wrong. Every first thought that I have pop into my head, we're going to assume that one's wrong. So we're going to go on to the next one. We should always, I honestly had to bounce thoughts off of Hannah, off of you. Josh, you've been riding this journey out for a long time with me. Josh is my sponsor.
Yeah.
So,
and I didn't know a lot of this story. So just like,
but I would call Josh and be like,
sponsor.
I didn't. I didn't.
Well, that's good. He's a good sponsor. Thank you, Josh.
He is. He doesn't tell me jack crap. Actually.
So, but I would call Josh or Hannah and be like, hey, should I stop at this gas station before I go home today? Like simple little things, because you're relearning how to reprogram your brain to actually make good thoughts. Even still to this day, I still have problems learning to retrust myself. Is that okay? Is that safe? But now that I'm being honest with myself, I'm able to actually ask myself that question, and I'm able to ask myself, was that the right motive? Did you actually have the right motive when you asked Hannah how she was doing, or did you just want her to think that you really cared about her a lot?
So true.
Or, so brutal, absolute honesty, and like, okay, I did this thing. I kind of want to do it again. Maybe I'm not in like full-blown addiction, but I kind of feel the ball starting to want to roll that way. Let's not do that. Let's not wait till we're like the boulder rolling down a mountain. Let's ask somebody. Let's put some parameters in place. Let's get some community in place of other like-minded people that can push you forward and that can help you grow. Like she said, the community, just being authentic and honestly yourself, but just the brutal honesty is the one.
Love it.
The one advice I would say that is so uncomfortable. If you're not uncomfortable, then you're not being
honest.
brutally
And
honest.
I do want to say, so I didn't want to share earlier because I didn't know if you wanted to share, but I knew I did know that Josh was a sponsor. Okay, that's something I did know. So that's why Hannah freaked out when I called her, what I alluded to earlier, because she answered the phone and she's like, oh my gosh, I didn't know if that was something that Josh and Austin had worked out. Like if something happened that was a fail-safe that you would call me. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm being brought into it now. So much pressure, type of thing.
Yeah, you would have texted her first and been like, I'm going to call you, but it's okay.
Everything's fine. I know.
Yeah, now I know the rules of engagement. You know?
That's right. No alarm bells are sounding right now.
Yes,
for
The
sure.
world's not burning down.
Yeah.
But that shows the PTSD, the trauma
definitely.
that happens from
the
that
impact
too.
of it. So first off, thank you guys for being
Thank you.
super vulnerable,
Yes.
and open, and sharing your story and your lives,
And
We know
allowing
how
us
hard
in.
that is,
Yeah.
and allowing us and everybody else that's here. We want to let everybody know that if you want to contact or connect with Hannah and Austin and you guys' podcast. Hannah, let everybody know. What's the name of the podcast? Where do you guys go, and how often do you guys post?
Okay, so we post every Monday on Apple and Spotify and YouTube.
No, not YouTube.
Not
right
YouTube.
Now.
Okay,
Working
because
on
we
it.
don't do video, so it's just podcast. Every Monday.
For now.
Fully Known Podcast. The Fully Known Podcast.
Yeah, the Fully Known Podcast.
The Fully Known Podcast. We're Fully Known Pod at Instagram. So but Fully Known Pod on Instagram. And the podcast,
Fully Known Podcast.
The Fully Known Podcast, if you're just going to search
Apple,
it in
Spotify. If you follow the Instagram page, Hannah puts the links out there every week. Our link tree's right on there, so you can find us.
Yep.
We post every Monday, new episode.
Monday.
Is it okay if people reach out to you? Is it okay that people can reach out?
We have
and
an
connect?
email too.
Yeah. fullyknownpod@gmail.com.
Yeah. And
Topics,
people do
questions,
email us.
recommendations.
Yep.
We are not therapists. We've paid for a lot of therapy though. So
Been through a lot.
Oh my gosh, tens of thousands of dollars.
What is the email again? Slower though.
the email is fullyknownpod@gmail.com.
Okay.
You can also send a message on Instagram.
And Hannah will get that.
Yep,
I do,
Hannah will get
and
that.
I do respond, and I do always say like, "Thank you for sharing your story." Or even Facebook, like Hannah Sutherland, people will message me, and I'm just like, it's freeing to tell your story to someone who has gone through it, because there is so much shame as a wife. Like, we'll just
Connection
have
is
sex
important.
more, and
Yeah,
he'll be
for sure.
fine, and it's just not.
And I know I could speak for them because I know that it's the same for us. We get a lot of people that reach out to us about blended families and the hardships that they're going through. Anybody that's ever reached out to us, and I'm sure anybody that reaches out to them, we pray for you guys.
Yes.
Like, there's so much power in prayer, and just sharing your story with strangers, just in trying to get some form of encouragement and stuff, is really, really important.
So I want to read this real quick. Somebody just said, the Conquer series is a great program that deals with sex addiction. I started attending the group at a church nearby. It helped so much, and I have been porn-free for 3+ years.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Is that Doug
Congratulations.
Weiss's program?
I think so. I can't remember.
I think we've heard of that. and
Thank
heard
you
good
for
things.
sharing that. Thank
Yeah,
you so
thank you.
much. These are the things that we need to be talking about. So
Yeah.
I want to thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you so much for being transparent.
Thank you.
And thank you
Yeah.
for being our friends.
We love you guys.
and thank
No
you for being on here.
I tell
Yeah.
Hannah all the time, she's one of the prettiest women I've ever seen in my life.
I agree.
All the time.
I
It's so
agree.
I
nice.
do. I do
It's
tell you
so
that all
nice.
the time.
No offense, but I disagree. So
Rude.
It's all right. I'll keep her to myself.
that's right, as you should. All right, guys, thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Yep.
Thank you for being here. You can find us every single Tuesday live at 7 p.m. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.